Hey guys, Dave here, and I wanted to go over a new book that I was reading and how it correlates to things. So the book is called The Tipping Point, and it's about how psychology and people, uh, that there's mavens, salespeople, and connectors that make things happen. But it's also about psychology of how people tend to observe things and maybe don't make things happen or do make things happen. And it's really good observations that I found correlation to how it relates to our operating expectations at LocalSplash and how people behave and just cultural expectations. So with that, I wanted to talk about dun, 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 Cultural Expectations 101. This chapter is broken windows and the bystander effect, which is discussed in the tipping point. And so you guys probably all have seen this in the airport. If you see something, say something, or some public areas. And it's kind of funny, we didn't actually have too many of them in the US until 9/11 or many years after that, but it's funny that this even needs to be advertised, but unfortunately, people need to be told what's to be expected of them. And just to be clear, everything in LocalSplash, this is to be expected. If you see some opportunity to escalate a problem issue, it is definitely your duty to do so. So that's one that's easy to spot an issue. A blatant big issue, the gorilla in the room, everyone knows, we spot it, we tackle it, hopefully it's resolved. But what about when it's something a little bit more subtle, a common problem that isn't perceived necessarily as bad or there's a known workaround? Those might be problematic, and I'll go into that in a minute. So in the tipping point, they discuss the broken window theory, and this is a concept that in many neighborhoods where there's broken windows, it tends to lead to other problems. It's correlated in more than just a way of saying, oh, well, there's a bad neighborhood, there's also broken windows. It's actually found that the acceptance of broken windows that are left unrepaired, other people conclude that, hey, no one cares, no one's in charge, and it further creates degradation. People don't report the crimes, and that crime and the next crime don't go reported until there's a further degradation of incidences, and it really is found to correlate to just a continuous downpour of challenges and crimes. And some interesting studies in the New York subsystem where they really got rid of just graffiti and broken glass, and other crimes just slowly dissipated pretty dramatically, actually. So in our case, our crime is this little guy, an arrow code. We'll see that in a minute, though. So here's the actual case example that I thought was interesting to bring up, and I'll dwell on it for a moment just to emphasize something weird that you might see. So we have sent messages in our system, SMSs, and they occasionally fail. And when they fail, the person then just retries, and the bottom one is the failure, and the person retried it again. Thank you for doing that. They got it sent, and it worked. That's actually kind of expected. It fails sometimes 10% of the time, and that just is a normal business activity. Unfortunately, SMS is kind of beyond our control with many carriers. But what happened more recently is that in July, just last month, the SMSs really continually fell, and it was hard to notice because it didn't happen just overnight, but it happened slowly over the month. The red lines there are attributing how many failed, and the blue is how many succeeded, until honestly, by the end of the month, we had essentially nothing working. So during that whole month, at the beginning of the month, we had some, and it just failed all the way down until just about everything was failing. And I'll click on this account here, but if I go to the SMSs, you'll see just like it's incredible. So this is like failure, 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 all the red there. And this would have been noticeable by some people if they looked at their account, they looked at their records they'd sent, but again, they'd seen them before. But how do you when people see this and they see it happening, it's like everyone else sees it happening, I don't have to do anything about it because everyone else will see it. It's called the bystander effect in this. And so the bystander effect is like when there's more people that you believe are observing something, you're less likely to report it. So it actually results in some bad situations where there's been crimes where there's like 36 people that observed it, but not one of them reported it. So how many people do you think reported the SMS problem? If you guessed 0, You were right. Out of 40 people that had encountered this issue this past month, not one report of this problem escalated to saying, hey, we see all the messages failing. Now, granted, the messages were failing before, so it wouldn't have been like this is different, but so you would have to have observed, hey, this has been excessively different. So anyway, this was a more subtle case, and it's one that kind of bit us because nobody noticed it until we did monthly audits, and that even doesn't necessarily happen that way. And just as a notice, while nobody actually died in this experiment, the concern is that with this acceptance that error messages are happening, that we're going to allow for other problems. So really wanted to emphasize this and just point out that we're here to do continuous improvement. If you see something, say something. There's IT help desk, client issues, products and processes, ideas channel, the general channel, and don't assume that the problem is known. Make sure that you can see that it's reported, and if it's really affecting you, be the squeaky wheel that reports it. Squeaky wheel gets the grease is the analogy. And if you're not sure, like, hey, I don't want to, rock the boat when I'm not sure, ask your manager, but you do have those other channels. So our workplace expectations are that things should work and they should be easy. You can ask for it that way, continue to complain till it gets that way. Remember, it's always day one. Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you reporting or not reporting issues as they come up. Not reporting if they don't happen, hopefully.